Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy Psycho, and I've got another Fear the Walking Dead review for you all today. And this one is going to be over Season 2, Episode 6, titled Sicut Cervus, or however you say that. I'm not sure if it's Sicut. I think the episode title actually has something to do with music, but anyways, I just want to say that this episode was overall probably one of my favorite episodes of the whole series, if not my favorite episode of this whole season. There was a lot of action, some very cool character development, a lot of emotional things going on. Everything was just perfect. The soundtrack was fantastic. I just really loved this episode. In addition, we start out with a very cool intro, and I just want to give props to the producers recently. We've gotten a lot of cool intros recently in the past few episodes that we've had, and I've really enjoyed every one of them. The latest ones that we've had, they always open up with a lot of mystery, and then it connects back to the story later on in the episode, which is why I love it so much. And it's kind of similar, like I've mentioned before, to the TV show titled Lost, where it opens up with an intro that catches your interest, and then later on it connects it to the story, and then you're like, wow, okay, that connected back very well. I'm just absolutely enjoying these intros so much. It was also very cool just to see all of these children. We haven't seen a lot of children on the show recently, just because this is the apocalypse setting, and you would think that a lot of them would have already been taken out. So to see this civilized community occurring here, and we see the church gathering, it's just a very different perspective that we're not really used to as of now. As soon as I saw them taking the communion with the bread, I knew that this could possibly be a Jonestown thing here, just because when you see a group gathering like this, especially in this apocalypse setting, with a bunch of children, I kind of thought in my mind, the way to take them all out and keep them from having a more gruesome death would be to end it all as a group together while they have their religious ceremony there. However, that idea would not fit with their religion, which is why we found out that it was actually them not trying to do that on purpose. It was really gruesome just to see all of their eyes bleeding as we see all of them getting taken out, and we clearly see that these are fighters. These are people that are going to put forth the extra effort to survive, so to see them being taken down like that, we realize that their intentions weren't to kill themselves, but somebody else has sabotaged them. And the idea behind that is just very brutal. At first I was thinking it could have possibly been the cartel or some other rival group that they had, and I think it would be very awesome to bring in the cartel in this TV show. The cartel is always something that I've been very interested in, so I would love to see some of that implemented into the show, just because they are so brutal. Moving back on over to the Strand and their group on Abigail, we got the interaction with Strand and Louise, I think that's his name, and right off the bat, a lot of action happens. It shows people coming on boats in which there's only supposed to be one person. A very cool scene within this interaction was when the people finally get on the boat and Madison and everyone else go downstairs as Daniel Salazar is translating everything. And I don't know what it was, but just the idea of Daniel translating all of those words and what's happening, it just felt like it was a tension-filled moment when Daniel was basically translating everything and delivering all of the news of what these people are planning on doing. And I just really love that moment. We then hear the gunshots, and that's the moment where you think, uh-oh, this could be going very south, and we don't really know who got shot up there, so it's kind of the mystery aspect, too, of not knowing who got shot. Of course, we realize that there are snipers around on different boats, and they're sniping at people, and Daniel Salazar just goes into survivalist mode, killing all of the people that were shot who would have possibly turned into walkers. So I just really love the fact that he kicks into that mode where he's thinking ahead and he's thinking about all of these possibilities that could put the group in danger. A really cool quote from this episode was when they finally start going towards land, and I think maybe Madison brings up the idea of why did they stop shooting at us, and someone says they think what's on land will kill us. That's a quote that I really enjoyed just because of that unknown aspect as well. Of course we know that there's probably walkers on this island, but that quote could be pointing to something else as well, such as there being other human threats on that island. It's the fact that these people with snipers and guns and heavily loaded individuals on multiple boats are scared to chase them onto this island that definitely raises some suspicion. As they arrive, we see that they finally walk up to the church, which was in the intro, and we see that there were a lot of people that were taken out, such as how we saw in the intro of all of the people dying and their eyes bleeding. Of course, Strand starts freaking out because he's looking for his partner, I think it's Thomas, I think that's his name, and he's looking all over for him and he can't find him. He goes in the church, and then that's the moment where we see the walkers coming around the corners of the building. And I just absolutely love this moment so much, and honestly, it gave me a really nostalgic feel with Resident Evil 4. If you played Resident Evil 4, you're gonna know what I'm talking about, with all of the walkers and the zombies around this Spanish church setting. It was just kind of nostalgic for me to see there because it really reminded me of that game. It was definitely a creepy vibe, just seeing all of those children in their church clothes and all of these adults just walking around the corner and creeping over as zombies. We see the group kicking into gear, and it was nice to see them working together once again. They're not afraid to kill walkers, and they're really getting used to it now. I can't say that fully, especially with Nick and Daniel, just because of their pasts. Plus, I can understand not wanting to kill a kid, even if it was a walker. Just the idea of killing a kid is definitely gruesome, especially if you've only been in this setting for a few weeks. I felt like this scene was done very well, and there was a lot of moments in this scene where it was not only just action, but it felt like it gave us some backstory and different perspectives on these characters as well. What I'm talking about when I say this is with Daniel and Nick, and then we have Madison and Chris, where we get that big reveal that Chris is not forgetting that Madison told Travis what happened and how Madison didn't believe Chris. It actually kind of surprised me to see Chris taking this spiral down very quickly. We see him as he hesitates, and then Alicia comes to the rescue, but later on in the episode we realize that Alicia knows what happened, and so does Madison after she tells her. In addition to that, we got the moment with Nick. Of course he's killing all of these walkers, but we see that it comes back on him later on in this episode. We also got Daniel Salazar. When he grabs one of the kids by the throat, it gives us a little flashback scene, such as like he's having a Vietnam flashback of back when he had to torture these people, and also probably torture and kill some kids as well. So it's really coming back to him lately, as we saw. He's getting flashbacks of voices, now he's getting flashbacks of actual things that happened, so we really understand that these things are starting to haunt him. To me, this feels very natural. I know in The Walking Dead with Carol's big change, it's understandable, but I feel like this change right here feels a lot more natural for some reason than Carol's transition, in my opinion. Just because Carol is so badass, and to see Carol change so quickly was definitely something surprising to see. However, for some reason, it feels like Daniel's transition, he's still killing and things, but he's also feeling guilty, and he's being haunted by his past. But it feels very natural. I think the reason that it feels different from Carol is that Daniel is still killing, and he's not only killing just because he's forced to, but also for other reasons as well. After this really cool scene, we finally move over to the mansion as the gates are opening, and this was another scene that reminded me of The Walking Dead, where they get at Alexandria, and Rick and Michonne are wondering what's going to happen. Can they trust these people? What is going to occur when they finally get there? And it kind of gave me this same vibe when they are opening up the gates of this new place, because they don't know if everyone is going to be turned when the gates open, or what is going to be behind those gates. That's another unknown aspect that I really enjoyed from this episode. The moment that I finally realized that this is a big community where people are thriving is where I think I saw some planters where someone was tending to all of the grapes or whatever was growing there in the fields, and I finally realized that this was an organized community and there are people living here. We then get the interaction where they're basically like, you've got to drop all of your weapons and then you can come in. This also gave me another feel with the No Sanctuary episode with Terminus, and that was where that scene actually backfired. I bet there were a lot of fans out there that were actually kind of nervous about this just because they remembered what happened in Terminus. After that, we got some interaction with Strand and Thomas, and we finally realized that Thomas is bitten, and just the interaction between those two, Strand crying, that was definitely emotional for me. I really felt for those two characters, and I just want to say that Coleman Domingo, who plays as Strand, did a fantastic acting job in this episode. I absolutely loved the things that his character did. He did a great job on getting some emotional attachment between the audiences and the characters. In addition, we got some interaction between Nick and Thomas's mother, and Thomas's mother was actually a very likable character at first. The dialogue between those two characters were definitely interesting, especially when she's discussing with Nick how those people aren't really dead. They overall presented her as a likable character at first. Later on, we get the scene with Chris and Alicia, where Alicia says, "I know what happened back there, Chris. I know what you tried to do." And then at first, Chris kind of just says no. He plays it off and acts like he didn't know what happened. And then as Alicia keeps pressing the issue and talking about how she knows what she saw, we then see Chris start to change there, and we see the darkness emerging from him. To me, this moment was very tension-filled, because Chris is being revealed as this character who we're not really used to. Chris became this one kind of whiny character who we didn't really like at first, and then now we're seeing a perspective of him turning into a villain, and I think the reason behind this is of what all he has gone through. Anyways, just the idea of him threatening Alicia kind of surprised me as well. He's definitely given me a Shane vibe right now. Before I forget, moving back on over to the moment where they just get into the community and Daniel meets the woman and starts talking in Spanish, and she says, "You can keep your weapons, but house rules come first." And of course we see Daniel Salazar, and this is why I love him so much. He's my favorite character. He's always thinking ahead, and that is why at first he's kind of resistant to giving over his weapons, because he knows what can happen with that. I'm just seeing a lot of Rick Grimes with him, even though he's a little darker than Rick. I also found it interesting how Strand told the mother about what happened to Louise or whatever his name was, and she just kind of plays it off, and that reminded me of the moment where the guy was talking about how strong his mother actually was, and she was just like, as long as he didn't get shot in the head, I'm okay with that. And that was one of the first hints that we got that there's something up with this idea, therefore leading back on over to the idea of keeping the walkers as pets just to honor the dead and be able to pray to them. There was one scene that really stuck out to me, and this is where Daniel Salazar walks over to one of the boards with all of the pictures on it to where people pray, and he looks up at the tree and sees an owl carved into it. As soon as I saw this, it felt like there was something up with that. I noticed that there were holes in the eyes, and later on in the episode, as we saw with Nick and Ophelia, Nick gets a little flashback as he's looking at the owl as Ophelia is praying. Now, something that I really honed in on at this moment was where it felt like I was hearing an echo as Ophelia was praying. Now, this could just be the sound of Ophelia echoing as Nick is going through his flashbacks, or it could also be the idea that that tree is hollow and that it's leading down to the pit of the walkers that they are keeping, therefore kind of representing the idea of talking to their dead ones and talking to their loved ones that have died, which is why they keep the walkers alive. To me, this feels like a genius idea when it comes to plot, just because of the culture going on there, and just because of the way that they perceive things around there, such as not stabbing or shooting them in the head so they can stay alive as walkers. And so if they put it down in this area, without actually having to talk to those walkers, they can kind of talk to them over to that prayer station where it goes through the tree, and technically they're talking to them, but they don't have to see all of the gruesome aspects to it. To me, it felt like this was one of the reasons why the mother was so happy that her son hadn't been shot in the head, of maybe the possibility of her actually getting her son once again and putting him in this container. However, this is one of those far-fetched theories that I felt like would be addressed in this episode if it was true, so it's most likely not possible, but I feel like that would be a pretty cool idea that they could implement into this. Moving back on over to the Strand situation with Thomas, we realize Strand is talking about actually killing himself, that way he can go in peace with Thomas. This idea kind of blindsided me for some reason. I wasn't really thinking that Strand was going to try and kill himself as well to go away with Thomas. I was actually starting to worry that he was going to follow through, and that was right up until we got the Talking Dead commercial where it showed who was on the couch. And usually if there's someone that dies in an episode, they're always going to be on the couch because that's kind of their last moment to discuss everything and talk about everything before they leave the show. So that really made me feel like Strand wasn't going to die there. Meanwhile, we also see the situation with Daniel talking to the mother, in which he finally realizes that the communion bread was poisoned, which is why all of those people at that church died. He realizes this because of the situation with the boy keeping all of those walkers alive behind that gate, and he goes and talks about it to her, finally realizing that they're keeping these people alive, just like in Season 2 of The Walking Dead with Herschel, how they're keeping all of those people alive, kind of to honor them and holding on to the idea that there might be some humanity left within them. I know that there's possibly going to be a lot of people that are angry to the fact that they might be recycling these ideas from The Walking Dead. However, in my personal opinion, I don't have a problem with this, because I feel like this is one of those things that can be common throughout this universe. Herschel and them on the farm aren't going to be the only types of people that want to keep those dead people alive. Especially with the Spanish culture going on Day of the Dead, I feel like it is definitely possible for these people keeping others alive just to honor them and still be able to talk to them. We then move on over to one of my favorite scenes in the episode, and this is where Chris is walking into Alicia and Madison's room because he realizes that Alicia has told Madison and Madison has told Travis what happened. At first I was kind of hesitant with the idea that Chris was really going to follow through with this plan. However, we see him calling Alicia over for a second there, and then we also see him walk up to the nightstand and grab the knife. And this is where I actually thought, holy shit, things are about to get real, and I was not expecting him to follow through. We then hear the gunshot as Alicia and Madison wake up, and this is one of those moments where I think it's definitely going to come back in the next episode because they both know what Chris was trying to do there, especially with the knife behind them while they're sleeping. It's just very crazy to see Chris taking this big change really quick. However, I can kind of see why it's happening, just because I think he's killed 2 humans so far, and he's killed a lot of walkers, so he's really changing right now. We then realize that the gunshot was Strand killing Thomas, and then Strand is put up to the idea of, is he going to kill himself by taking the communion? One thing that I did kind of wonder about though, was the fact that the mother was so much on emphasizing the fact of not killing the person by stabbing or shooting them in the head, that way they can turn, but the mother gives the communion bread to Strand, that way he didn't have to damage his head in some way. I may be missing something here, but it feels like it's kind of a consistency issue, just because the mother emphasized on not killing the person by shooting or stabbing them in the head, however she lets her own son get shot in the head. That's just something I thought I would bring up because I want you guys to clarify me on that if I'm not understanding something going on here. I love the shot of this scene where it shows Strand walking up to the communion bread like he's about to take it, but then he walks straight past it. And I just felt like this was a really cool misleading scene that I enjoyed, because I know there were Strand fans out there that were thinking, please God, no, don't do this, Strand, please don't do this. So it was just funny to think of people screaming at the TV at that moment, just because it kind of teased you with the idea that one of your favorite characters is about to possibly die. Just before I end this review right here, I also want to talk about Daniel Salazar's struggle with his past really quick. As Daniel was talking to the mother about refusing the communion bread, the mother clearly sees what's going on with Daniel and that he's struggling with his past here. I think she said something like, "I'm not afraid of the dead, but are you?" It was something along the lines of that, but this line really did hit home for me and had a lot of impact and significance, especially in relation to his backstory, and here is my reasoning why. Throughout this episode, it seems like Daniel refused the idea of religion, and I think one of the reasons of why this is happening here is because if he does believe in this afterlife, he definitely knows that if this is true, he's not going to be going to the good place, and he knows that he's going to be meeting some of these people that he tortured and killed. And I think the idea of that really haunts him, just because he's done some terrible things, and these people would really want to get back at him for that. In addition, I also think it's not only that idea, but he's also thinking back of how he had to do some very terrible things, and looking back on it now with the family, he's realizing that he's killed kids, he's tortured kids, he's done some terrible things, and it's really haunting him now. I'm really loving this character backstory being implemented in bits, and I'm just really enjoying a lot of the characters overall as of now. Usually there's only a few characters that I like here and there, such as Nick, Strand, and Daniel. However, now I'm actually enjoying a lot of other characters, like Alicia and Chris. Chris is interesting because he's changing a lot, sort of even into a villain. Anyways, these are just my thoughts on this episode. Make sure to leave me your thoughts and ideas in the comments section below. Did you guys enjoy this episode? What do you think about Chris? What do you think about Daniel? What do you think about Strand? All of the characters. Also, please make sure to leave a like on this video to show some support. It always helps out an absolute ton. Thanks for watching again, guys. It honestly means a whole lot to me. Peace out.